The major issues that's challenging Greenland are the following. First of all, the huge landscape that needs security covering. The second is the economy and the sources of income and prosperity. And the third challenge is the educational level in the population. And the fourth one is the interest in Greenland from three big major powers, and that's China, Russia, and United States. Fifth challenge is it's a quiet but disturbed history with Denmark, and the memories of that relationship. And I would like to talk on these five in just small comments each. Greenland is a huge continent, and that makes it difficult to cover. Also, for a superpower, even if Denmark put a lot into the defense, it will have great difficulty in covering the whole areas. And the same will go for the big nations, because it's a continent more than half the size of Europe, and it's filled with ice and has many holes to it. But it's also a strategical important place in the Arctic, and that's becoming more and more important with the situation we're globally getting into, where the fight over the north is under focus, and there has been a lot of activity recent years from Russians and Chinese and of course Americans and NATO surrounding Greenland, and also involving Denmark and the Greenlanders themselves. And that's something we have to realize. Greenland cannot defend itself. So it has actually several options. One of them is to stay under the Danish security and the Danish security under NATO. The second one is to shift from a Danish alliance to an alliance with the United States and get under the more direct security of the United States. And that needs a shift in politics as well. And that's, in my opinion, not a good idea for some reasons I told in another video, that they will be most likely swallowed, and they will have very big trouble getting through with their politics and human rights if they are shouting up about it later. And the second challenge for Greenland is the economic and the resources for growth. It's very scarce, and we know that. It has big fishing areas, but it's not actually being used. Its potential is not being fully used. And it has also mining and several minerals that are rare, and it has perhaps also oil in it. But it's very difficult to get to. And so the Greenlandic economy, if they need to have a welfare society, needs to have infusions from outside, and that has been Denmark that's been providing that until now. So the Greenlanders has, since they started getting the home rule, been talking about how to find means of getting independent, and that started being more and more in the focus after 2009, where they had this self-governing issue, and they accepted it and said yes. The majority said we want self-governing rule in Greenland, and so they have been looking for sources of income, and they have potentially two major income sources. The first one is from the minerals and the possible oil and gems that's found in the from the mining, with other words, mining and drilling. And the second is from the fishing and hunting and some of the goods they can export, and a little bit of tourism as well. And my observation is they have been much divided between these two, and they have not been able to walk on both legs. And if they walk a little bit on one, the other falters. So when they start looking into the mining projects, they are being told that they need to take the environment under consideration and take global firms under consideration, and many times it's been sabotaged. On the other side, I'm not saying sabotaged on purpose, but because of many things to look into. The other side, looking into fishery and looking into hunting and the goods, they are not generating enough because there are not enough people to work with it, and there are not enough equipment to do so, and there are also regulations at sea, and we know that some of the Greenlandic shores are being used by fishermen from other countries, and that can make sometimes some dispute that's difficult to get on with, but it's not being potentially used. The third challenge that Greenland has is the population is not, it's just a very small population with identity questions between being Danish and being Greenlandic and shifting. And they are between three major powers that's looking into them and surrounding them and wants to buy their allegiance. And early on, we had Russians coming there without anybody really noticing, but I'm sure NATO already kept its eye on it. And then we had the Chinese companies trying to get into Greenland, and that was also somewhat avoided by the awareness of the Greenlanders and the Danish and the NATO as well. And now we have, in a very strange situation, the United States looking into Greenland and wanting NATO to give it over, or wanting to take it in a way or another for security reasons. And that's making some tensions underneath the lines. And the Greenlanders has to put their voice through now to say that that we want our independence, but we're not willing to just throw ourselves into huge arms of big countries. That they should be satisfied with the relation with Denmark and go on from there, getting what they want and putting pressure on Denmark to get more and more of what they want, and getting the companies to start drilling for the riches and start optimizing the fishery and the hunting and the exporting of goods economy. And they have to do it now and do it with a plan of 5 years that could be efficient. And the problem is also lack of efficiency. I know that from inside and insiders who works in the system. It's highly inefficient, both in Danish and Greenlandic hands. And sometimes you get the question from some people, is that on purpose? That we should not develop and get efficiency in this country? And others, they see it just as a lack of potentials and lack of people with qualifications. And the difficulty of getting people from the outside is that they will quickly be overrun by workers and by people from another place because they are not so many. So the problem of the population and the big major powers looking at Greenland puts it in somehow a big delicate situation with a challenge maybe they are not even ready to handle very properly. And that's why the role of Denmark is very crucial here, because they have a lot of saying behind the lines and through their contacts and their deep relations with the Greenlanders. My personal hope is that Greenland takes the side of Denmark, and even though they have had trouble and still have, and the Greenlanders doesn't feel treated well by Denmark, it's the best way of getting along and getting on, because there are relations, there are historic cultural bonds that they can build on. We have the Danish queen and her family who loves Greenland and would like to see the Greenland prosper. And so it's, in my eyes, a lot better for Greenland to stay safe within these bounds and claim more of what they want, because Denmark would listen to it in these situations, but send a clear message to the world that they are not in doubt, not for a second. They want their independence on the long run, but on the short run, they are part of Denmark and would like to stay that way. They have to show this compassion, and I hope they will, because that will bring them the safety from these big nations who really doesn't care a bit about neither Greenland or Greenlanders. That would just be a PR stunt and would be a manipulative move to just show them that they like them and all that. We have seen 1,000 times in history. Greenlandic people has just to open the history books, and some have already done, and they can see things that's really not likable. So let's move on to the fourth challenge that Greenlanders have. And so we have the trouble with the education system in Denmark. In Greenland, the level of education and level of expertise is very low. There are very, very few doctors and nurses and teachers and very few people with the right qualifications. And that's a kind of taboo. Many people wouldn't like to talk about it, neither in Greenland or outside, for not to hurt the feelings of the people, and that's understandable. But if we have to look at the current situation from an analytical point of view, politically and socially, that's a huge challenge for the Greenlandic system, that they cannot provide the expertise needed, and that's why they will be for a long time ahead dependent on educating people in Greenland, and they have to do it properly. And we have up to 1/3 dropouts of all major high schools in Greenland, and the characters are very low. Many times they come with inflation, like some people can score an A or a B, but if you compare it to what they would have scored in another country similar to the same level of content and education system, they will only have gotten a C or a D or an E. And so there is some inflation, that people seems to be better than they are, and that's not good for the country to go that way. They have to be real in their competency evaluation. And there are some very, very brilliant and clever Greenlanders, and many of them are living outside the country. They have taken their education to live somewhere else. And I know several of these persons, and they can sometimes say that unfortunately they do not find their expertise used at their home base, and their country is not really capable of adapting it. They would rather listen to some people from another country, and most of the time from some Danish background, or maybe English or something else, than listen to their own people. And some of them say that they find there are better possibilities out in the world, because they need good schools for their kids, they need the good roads, they need the good shopping places, they need these basic issues of security and calmness, and not seeing too many drunks on the street or too many fights. So they lack the security and the good possibilities, and that's why people with good education and good brains and good working hands, they prefer to live somewhere else. So we have, maybe they say, up to 1/10 and maybe 20% of the Greenlanders living somewhere else, mostly in Denmark, but also in other places in the world. I'm sure they love Greenland and have good contacts there, but they are not there to carry their load and to help building the society. And if they get back, they get frustrated. I have seen it, and I have met them, and I have met people who came and went, and they say, it's impossible, I cannot keep going here, and I don't want my kids to grow up among these people who are controlling everything, and they are not doing it well. And they are talking about their politicians, and they are talking about the local administrative people, and they are talking about how things are done. And if people don't want to listen to this, well, there is no way out of the dark pit, because if you cannot listen to criticism, and you cannot look deeply into yourself and let the more competent people govern, and not those who are voted for, or maybe have some famous background or family, that won't help the Greenlandic society. So that's also a big challenge, besides some kind of corruption that goes side by side with this lack of competence sometimes. The fifth and last challenge is the memories and the histories they have with Denmark. And that sometimes complicates things, and it's also an opening for other countries to use it to get into Greenland and to play with the feelings of the Greenlanders, to say that, look how Denmark have treated you. Look at these Danes who came here and for 70, 80 years have been the masters. You have been the followers. You've only recently been able to get up to that level where you can get posts in the States or be a director with Greenlandic background. Up until then, they have been suppressing you and keeping you out. And that's the story they also tell themselves and among themselves. And they also tell people they trust, or maybe when they find the opportunity to say it, they say it. And they say that there have been situations with Denmark, and we have seen it in the media, and some of the coverage of some people who wrote a book about how they were taken by force to learn Danish and live with a Danish family, or how maybe even Christianity was forced upon them. So some people has gone very deep back in history to find all the negative stuff about Denmark, forgetting also the positive sides or the positive relations and the intermarriages, and how much Greenlanders are actually influenced by Danish culture in the food, in the way they talk and speak and walk and do things, Of course, we can see the Greenlandic traits. I have seen it. It's very clear. But underneath it and beside it, you can also find the Danish mentality very close, and you find it in the churches and in the way of celebrating and having the traditions. So they're gonna have to look into that once more. And in which direction is it gonna go? Is it gonna go like everything is bad from Denmark and they are suppressors? And I believe the Greenlanders, and I know it because I have a foreign background as well, and I have sometimes met that in the Danish society among some people and on political level as well, and I know it exists. They know how to suppress and segregate, and they know how to keep all the eggs in their basket, and that's how the big colonizers have gone about their work in the world for more than 200-300 years. But that's not the whole truth about Denmark, and that's not the whole truth about the Danes and the Danish people who really like the Greenlanders, and they are liking them more and more now, of course. But they have liked them, and I have met a lot of Danes who have married into Greenlandic families or the other way around, and they feel very, very close connected, and they feel that this is just another family, a part of Denmark, another communion, or what you call it. So we have to see in which way this goes, and I really hope the cool heads and the fair look into history will prevail. But anyhow, these are, in my opinions, the five big challenges. It's not merely my opinion. It's also what's been talked about. But I've just gathered it into a short summary. So it's basically the geography and the economy and the big nations looking into the Greenlanders who has identity questions about themselves and their relation to the world that's not clarified. And the fourth is their challenge with the education system, alongside some corruption and maybe incompetent people getting to posts they shouldn't get to. And fifth and last is their relation to Denmark and the historic relation. And all that is going to impact where Greenland is headed and how it's headed and in which way it will go and how the big powers will be able to influence it. And I'm very, very keen and anxious to see if Denmark is and I know Denmark can get many times what it wants, even though it seems like a small and easy country to step over, but it's not. And I think Denmark is going to find some diplomatic and good ways into strengthening the relations with Greenland and avoiding the crisis with the United States. And I'm hopeful to that and hope all the best for Greenland. This is my second home country and I love it. And I hope really they will prosper and be the sheikhs of the ice, as I told them once. I more than once. I told them I came from the desert sheikhs and saw how rich they became. And you have the same possibilities. You can become the sheikhs of the ice and perhaps so. I wish them the best and wish the best prosper for their future. And I feel a bondage with Greenland and Greenlandic people. So this is close to my mind and soul, but I'm outside and I'm outsider and I cannot do more than use my voice as I'm doing here, and I hope the best.